Hi everyone, welcome back to the Blues Focus channel. For an interesting video today, Dong Ren has officially resigned as Birmingham City CEO. If you haven't heard that already, I'd be surprised if you hadn't, especially if you're a Blues fan. But yeah, so it's finally happened. Kind of out of the blue. There was no hints or rumours of it like there normally is at Blues. No, it just happened, and it's about time too. Obviously, there was a few protests and whatnot going on. I personally don't think that had anything to do with it. I think it might, it might have looked badly on the club for the higher ups a bit, but I personally don't think that's why he's gone. I'd like to believe that it was down to the higher ups just finally seeing on paper how Dong's reign at this club has fared, and it's not fared well. It's just been constant turmoil and no success whatsoever. When TTA came in originally, there was the potential of success because we were on the fringes of the playoffs, technically in the playoffs, just out of our goal difference, if you will. So yeah, and new owners can always be exciting because you think investment. I don't even think TTA technically owns us anymore. We're owned by all sorts of people, people in Colombia, people in China. It's a massive spider web, and I'm sure you're all aware of that anyway. But Al Majir tends to put that stuff better, or Daniel Ivory, you might know. Yeah, I do believe he's done some good work on that. So if you wanted to get more information on kind of the structure at the club, then that's the route you want to go down. Um, but yeah, no, talking more about the main topic, Dong Ren being gone. I feel like as well as a reaction, this video will also be a bit of an assessment on what he's actually done since he's been at the club. And we can just sort of recap and realise why it's for the best that he's gone. Although I have to remind anyone, to be honest. Let's face it. But yeah, so let's just talk down sort of all the things that have occurred since he's been at the club. Uh, where do you start, really? Obviously, when they came in, they sacked Rowett, the best manager we'd had for a few years. Finally brought some stability to the club after a bit of turmoil over the last couple of years with the finances and obviously Carson Young money laundering and leaving the club in a state. Um, so yeah, it felt like we were going in the right direction. It was exciting. And then they come in and just out the blue, it seemed like everything was going to be okay. They were releasing videos of Gary Rowett saying, "Welcome to Birmingham City Football Club, to TTA or whatever. Look forward to the future," all that jazz. For then a few weeks later, we beat Ipswich at home 2-1. Next day, Rowett's gone. And I feel like we all remember where we were that day. I certainly do. I've said it on the podcast a few times and other various podcasts. I was in an RE lesson and my Villa mate was telling me about it and I didn't believe him. I thought he was playing a joke on me. But when I found out it was true, I was heartbroken. I couldn't quite believe it. Um, but yeah, and then they brought in Gianfranco Zola, the worst manager statistically in Birmingham City history. Do I think he was the worst manager we've ever had? Actually, personally, no. Nice guy. I think he would have actually fared better tactically with the squad we have now than we had back then, because back then we had a team of battlers. Now we have some battlers and probably actually a few more technical players these days. So it was all about timing. And at the time, the owners didn't really know much about football whatsoever. They weren't football people. They had a little bit of background in it, but the way they treated things, I don't believe that they were football people at heart. And they got rid of something brilliant, and that really affected the squad. I remember there was supposedly rumoured a few tears in the changing room when Rowett told everyone he was leaving. Um, as you'd expect, because he'd had such a big impact on the club since he joined. So no, that was mad in itself. And then they bring in Zola. Zola goes on one of the worst runs we've ever seen at the club. I think it was like 2 victories in 21 games or 23 games. Um, but 2 victories, that's all that needs to be said. However, one of them was absolutely quality. Wolves away. I don't think many fans will forget that one. What a game that was. David Davis shushing all the Wolves fans. Anyway, moving on. Probably one of the few highlights of Dong Ren's time at Blues was that game, and that's about it. Feel like that's all you can pick out. Um, so yeah, moving on. Zola leaves. There was no plan of him being sacked. He resigned for the best. Redknapp comes in. We lose to Villa, but a half decent performance. So there was few things to take in there when it comes to the last two games. We have to win to stay up. We beat Huddersfield, who would already sealed a playoff spot with 10 men. And yeah, that what a great home game that one was. Craig Gardner scoring the penalty. Che Adams getting sent off when he shouldn't have been. It was all quite crazy. And then you got the final day away at Bristol. What a day that was. Um, Che Adams scoring reasonably early on and then having to hold on for the rest of the game. My legs were shaking everywhere that day. I could not stay still. It was just the fact that we had to hold on for so long and the clock was just going so slowly. It was mad. But yeah, and then obviously the season after that, we splashed the cash under Redknapp on players that we haven't properly assessed. I feel like we've just gone out and bought for the sake of it and wasted a lot of money. And that's a big part of the debt at the club, really. That one transfer window, I think it was like 14 signings. One of them being record signing Hotter at the time, who he was amazing at Brentford. So you couldn't quite believe it. He'd come to Birmingham City, and then you see why Brentford, when he actually played for us, you'd see why Brentford were delighted that they got that much money for him, to be honest. In fairness, Hotter, I think he started really, really poorly at the club, but then went on to actually have a couple of decent seasons, especially the one under Monk, where he got 12 assists for the season. It was very, very impressive. But then obviously he made the move across the city, unfortunately. But I think we got a better player in return. Maybe not technical wise, but consistency. Gardner is definitely better. So yeah, then that kind of brings us on nicely to Redknapp failing, the signings not working. Then we bring in Steve Cottrell. Oh dear. And in fairness, Steve Cottrell, I think generally he's a nice guy. I There was a lot of interference from Dong Ren and the people that work with him in the team selection under Cottrell and the training sessions and stuff like that. And I do believe that's probably why it didn't work out so well for Cottrell, unfortunately. Just another nice guy that unfortunately kind of lost the plot in the end. Um, it seemed like the job was just driving him nuts, and I don't blame him. Under the circumstances he was working under, and then obviously he's left. We bring in Gary Monk, um, who was brought in by Zhao, not Dong. So it was just more failed appointments from Dong and then another successful appointment from Zhao. Gary Monk keeps us up. Um, Goes on to have a good season after that. Um, Especially that season that we actually had a decent season in, considering we were under probably one of the biggest issues that Dong Ren brought to Birmingham City Football Club, and that was the transfer embargo. We were unable to sign players. Um, we had to, if we were signing any players, it had to be very, 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 cheap prices. And we still broke the business plan anyway, didn't we? So yeah, that wasn't so fun. We went against the the EFL business plan and the transfer embargo, and then got a slap on the wrist for that as well. Then on comes the points deduction for financial fair play for that giant Redknapp splurge cash the season before, or a couple of seasons before. So yeah, the list goes on. It's a very deep, dark story that doesn't end here. But the points deduction was probably one of the worst parts of it. But Monk kept us up, so fair play. With a restricted budget, but some half decent players, and definitely got the best out of them that season. And it was a pleasure to watch Che Adams and Juki that season, as I'm sure you all remember. And then one of the few decent things Dong managed to do was keep hold of Che in that January of that season. And then we sold Che for a decent amount in the end. So another reasonable, bit of business from Dong. It wasn't all negative, but there was very, very, very few positives to his reign. He did have his decent moments, and I will touch upon those as we go along. So yeah, we had the transfer embargoes. If you look at this season, the destruction of the women's team, that is outrageous, absolutely outrageous, and just there's no other way to put it other than disgusting, because it's just not fair. Birmingham City has been well known for having a good women's team. I think it was only like 3 years ago that we were in the Champions League. A few more years ago, a bit further back, won the FA Cup. The women's team has always been successful, and for it to be stripped apart the way it has by Dong Ren is just unbelievable, and it's horrible to see. But hopefully, with him now gone, the women's team can have a fresh start and truly rebuild. It just depends who comes in replace of Dong Ren. But I think that's on everybody's mind at the moment. A few decent candidates, but I imagine it will probably still be one of the lot from the inner circle, from the TTA lot and all the other owners around there. It could be Zhao, to be honest. He might resume control, at least temporary control for now, I'd imagine. But Zhao has a good relationship with Bowyer, which is always good to hear. But yeah, then that brings us on to the academy. Birmingham City's always been known for having such a good academy, and he tried to change the academy structure to a B team and a C team sort of thing, which would eliminate a lot. I mean, a lot of talent, and it completely ruined the years of hard work at the academy. Luckily enough, that got binned off due to the negative reaction it got from fans, and too right. So yeah, and hopefully the academy structure stays the way it is now, with your under 23s, your under 18s, and so on, moving downwards. Then you've got the whole stadium debacle, our stadium falling to pieces, and repairs, however long they're going to take. I feel like they should probably be one of the number one priorities, with fans hopefully coming back next season. They have said that they don't think the stadium will be ready for them, which is gutting. It's heartbreaking. And I would have thought that had been a number one priority over the summer, the stadium, personally. But then we don't own our own stadium. We don't own our own training ground. It's another piece to the massive jigsaw puzzle. And that's dangerous waters to head into with that sort of ownership. If you look at Coventry, who we've given a ground to this season, they had a similar sort of situation with their stadium and not owning that. So we've seen what can happen to football clubs, messing around like that. So hopefully that doesn't happen to Blues, but they certainly need to fix the stadium ASAP, because I want my seat back. That's for sure. But yeah, so I think another big one is the amount of employees that have been at the clubs for over a decade, and a few that have been there for a good few years. Trusted employees, loved employees, that did a good job, but just didn't agree with the way things were being run, um, and that they paid for it. And Dong got rid of them, brought his own people in that weren't football people, and that has seen a massive decline in the club as well. And I think Paul Robinson put it best, that there is a lack of football people at our club right now. And hopefully whoever comes in can bring in a few more football people. I'd love to see us employ a general football person in the new CEO role, like whether it could be someone like even Alex McLeish, Michael Johnson. I saw that one on Twitter earlier. I thought it was a decent shout from Blues for All. And I remember the days of when Harry Redknapp, instead of becoming permanent manager, there was rumor of him being director of football instead. Whether he came in that role, preferably not. I think I prefer to see someone like McLeish, who has a good relationship with Bowyer, or Michael Johnson, who's just got a generally great relationship with the club and its fans. So that's a good shout. But turning back more to about Dong again, the multiple relegation fights every season, we were never challenging. We were never ever challenging under Dong Ren for the top 10 ever, never. The brief time, maybe. Well, obviously when they came in, we were challenging, but then it's because of them that we weren't challenging anymore. And then the closest you got to that is when we were 8th under Gary Monk, but we all knew we were going to get a points deduction. So the joy of being in the top 10 was never going to last for long. And that proved to be the case. And then we finished 17th in the end that season. Technically would have finished 14th, but once we actually got the points deduction, we went on a 6-game losing streak, which is never great, obviously. But that's just another long line of bad things that's happened to the club since Dong Ren took over. In place of whatnot, representing TTA and all the other companies that own us, I lose count. So yeah, and then obviously the hiring and firing of managers consistently. We've had no consistency of a manager. The closest you got to consistency with a manager while Dong Ren was at the club was Gary Monk, and that's a whole topic in itself. Probably the longest reigning manager, that's for sure, in Dong Ren's reign. But that wasn't even his pick. That was Zhao's pick. Zhao was the one who brought Gary Monk in. Dong didn't really seem to like him by the looks of things and wanted to get him gone. And he did, but there was some rumours around Gary Monk. We can never know the truth. We can't take every rumour as truth. We can all have our own opinions and, what we think might have happened, but I don't think we'll ever truly know for a good long time yet. But from the looks of it, either side, it looks like Gary Monk had done a few dodgy things, but Dong Ren has done his fair share of dodgy things as well. But we will never truly know. Hopefully one day there will be more clarity on that one. But Gary Monk certainly got the fans while he was at the helm. It's just a shame it kind of went away in the end the way it did. But these things happen in football. That's life, unfortunately. And then I suppose two other key things I want to talk about in Dong Ren's reign is, the tracksuit and the football boots getting out on the training ground. That is not acceptable. But moving his office to the training ground, again, I don't think that's personally acceptable. I think if you hire a manager, you've got to let them do their job and let them bring their own people in. And also let them be in control of transfers. That's essential. At least you'd think anyway, for a standard football club. But they had too much of a say in transfers, especially under Pep Clotet and other managers. It's frustrating, and there was also rumours of under Gary Monk. Gary Monk had a plan for how he wanted to do cheap transfers, still sticking with an R limit and following the EFL business plan. And Dong Ren wanted to just go splash cash again, which is frustrating, very frustrating. So, there's a few rumours and whatnot, nothing we can all know for certain. But just poor recruitment in general as well. Like, there's one or two decent signings, one or two good little pickups on cheap. That in fair play to Ren, he has done one or two few decent deals. And there have been times where I've been quite happy with Blues' transfer business. So, it's not all been doom and gloom, but it's mostly doom and gloom. I think the negatives massively outweigh the positives. But, you've got to obviously credit him where credit is due for half decent things he's ever done at the club. So fair play, but no thank you for all the mess you've occurred in lots of other important areas of the club itself. So, I do think that training ground thing was just out of order. Clubs shouldn't be doing that. You don't see other clubs doing that. It's just weird. And, the ownership should never get that involved in team selection or training or just be watching over all the time. It's not right. It's just not. It's not natural in football. But yeah, so I feel like I've covered the long list of wrongdoings that he's done. I've probably missed out one or two things. One more thing, actually, the sacking of Richard Beale, who was under 23s coach, I believe, because he missed the playoff final against Leeds at youth level. And he actually went to a event that he'd helped organise for his friend who unfortunately lost his life, and that's Nick Mole in the Nick Mole Cup. So, he'd already made prior commitments to that. He'd made agreements with Gary Monk. Gary Monk was okay for him to to do it. You know, he thought everything was all okay with the club, so he went and did that, and he got cover for the youth game, and I think that's fair. You know, I don't see anything wrong in that. And then Dong Ren, who wanted Beale out the club anyway, because Beale was one of the few, you know, characters that had been at Blues for a long time and wasn't afraid to speak his mind. And we did a podcast with Richard Beale, and he covered all of this. And then he found out there was going to be an investigation into him not turning up for that game, and Dong Ren spun it as, you know, oh, if Blues got to the playoff final, I didn't turn up, it makes me look bad, blah blah blah. And he's using that as an example, but I don't think that's fair. I just think Dong Ren has abused his power there and got rid of another great football person that was already at the club. And it's just, you know, it's part of that same topic of firing loyal and respected employees. Um, so I'm glad to see the back of Dong Ren now for Blues. It's a relief, to be honest. But yes, I know they launched the investigation, and you know, Richard Beale went in and he just found out that they were just getting rid of him. There was no real investigation. They were just using this as an excuse to sack him. Um, and you know, we spoke to Richard Beale on the podcast, and he said, you know, would you take relegation to the conference to get Dong Ren out of the club? And he said, yes, absolutely. So what does that tell you about the bloke? He's clearly a control freak. That in Dong Ren is not respected by many people at the club whatsoever, by the sounds of things. And he does sound like a control freak, and I'm glad that he's out the club now. It'd be nice to see some former faces like Richard Beale or anyone else who previously worked at the club come back. Whether that's possible, it would be great to see if that did happen. Um, but we'll have to wait and see. I think, you know, the replacement is crucial. I think it'd be fantastic if the club went for someone that knows the club, gets on well with the fans, is a football person. I don't think that's going to happen, but if it did, I would be overjoyed. I cannot express how happy I would be. However, back to the topic of Dong, I'm just happy to see the back of him like every other Blues fan. I know he's still on a few boards that are involved with the club. Hopefully, he leaves those as well, but we'll see. Again, something that Daniel Ivory, Almagier will probably know more about than me. So definitely keep an eye out for stuff like that, and hopefully we find out what's going to happen for Blues in the future, and hopefully it's positive. I do feel like this could be a fresh start for Blues now to truly move on from this period and succeed under Lee Bowyer. You know, we're not asking for much. Our expectations are quite low now. You know, I think we'd all take a comfortable mid-table season. I certainly would. It'd be nice. It makes such a nice change to finish like 12th or something. But no, I think Bowyer can really take us far if we stick by him and, you know, let him spend the money on who he wants to spend the money on. I have full trust and faith in him, like many other Blues fans, and I'm very excited for the future. And hopefully he's backed by a good CEO as well, whoever takes Dong Ren's place. And let's not forget all the crazy interviews and all that stuff and the mad social media replies. He definitely in his towards the later time of his time at Blues, he definitely became a bit more public. Um, Obviously, he also retired Jude's shirt. There was that. There was also uh, what else was there? When he said that we'd be in the Champions League in 3 years under Karanka. Um, you know, there was the talk. I think it was the BBC WM interview where he just chatted numbers, to be honest. He was just throwing numbers at fans, making everything sound good when it's not. So there's certainly been a few crazy moments. And then obviously there was the time where he was replying to fans and stuff and replying to some journalists and offering them out and whatnot. And then there was that time where I think it was Edward Cheng offered out a fan. In the car park at St Andrews. So you know, there's been all sorts of crazy stuff happening during their regime. So it's mad. But hopefully, you know, the higher ups now can bring in somebody good to replace Dong Ren and just do a much better job. But that wraps up the video from me, guys. Really, I hope you found this sort of assessment and overview helpful. But also, like me, you're delighted that Dong Ren's just finally gone. So yeah, that's great, really. But thank you everyone who's joined me again. It's been a pleasure chatting to you all. Leave your comments down below on your thoughts on Dong Ren finally resigning. I'll try and reply to as many as I can. I love chatting to you all. So yeah, that would be great. And also, if you're feeling extra kind, please drop a like, and also check out the Patreon page for some of our exclusive packages, and get early access to stuff. I intend to do a lot of pre-season content on this channel for you guys to enjoy. So I'm looking forward to producing that as well. But that's it from me, guys. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep right on.